the Folksy Friend, and on this channel I like to talk about stories, in particular folk tales, beliefs, and mythologies. On Tuesday we talk about Tolkien, and today is Tuesday, so let's go. Still in the same shirt because I'm filming these all on the same day. All hope is gone that the Two Trees of Valinor could be revived. Melkor, now known as Morgoth, the black foe of the world, killed the High King of the Noldor and fled to Middle-earth. There, with his stolen Silmarils, he crowned himself king of the world and reforged his great fortress of Angband, turning it into his new stronghold. With Feanor gone and all those around the Ring of Doom aware that Melkor had truly escaped and was out of reach with the Silmarils, the Valar sat in silence for a very long time. The Vanyar and the Maiar that were there sat with them and just wept, but the Noldor began to leave, wanting to return to their city. Tirion had become dark and full of fog that had drifted from the sea through the Calakiria. They lamented the darkness of their home and mourned their king. Then Feanor appeared, breaking the terms of his banishment in open rebellion of the Valar. He called for the Noldor to join him at the top of the city at the high court of the king. Many of the Noldor went, lighting their way using torches, eager to see what Feanor had to say. From the court of the High King, Feanor made a great speech, one that went down in the history of the Noldor, one that they never forgot. Feanor was not only a greatly skilled smith, he was also a masterful speaker, and his tongue had great power over hearts when he would use it. In the darkness of their city, lit only by firelight, Feanor's words were full of fury and pride. He whipped the crowd into a frenzy, speaking in rage over Morgoth, in grief over the death of his father, and in anguish over the theft of his Silmarils. He claimed his right as Finwë's eldest son to be their new king, and spoke against the Valar. He cried that the Valar could not even keep their own land safe, so why on earth should the Noldor trust them and stay there? He refused to stay in the same land as the kin of the man who had killed his father, and demanded to know why his people would stay either in this land of darkness. They could return to the beauty of Cuivianen and live in the free, open lands of starlight in Middle-earth. He stood before his people for a long time, convincing them to join him in his journey to Middle-earth, to go now before it was too late. Then he repeated one of Morgoth's lies, that mortal men were coming, and these men were going to usurp the elves' claims on the world and rule over it. Fair shall the end be, he cried, though long and hard shall be the road. Say farewell to bondage, but say farewell also to ease. Say farewell to the weak, say farewell to your treasures, more still shall we make. Journey light, but bring with you your swords, for we will go further than Orome, endure longer than Tulkas. We will never turn back from pursuit. After Morgoth to the ends of the earth, war shall he have and hatred undying. But when we have conquered and regained the Silmarils, then we alone shall be lords of the unsullied light and masters of bliss and beauty in Arda. No other race shall oust us. Then, in the fury of his hate and his anguish and his uncontrollable grief, he swore a terrible oath, an oath made on the name of Iluvatar himself. It could never be forgotten, even after the ending of the world. He named Manwë and Varda, king and queen of the Valar, as witness to this oath, swearing that any who took it and broke it would be plagued by a terrible darkness. Feanor's sons jumped up to join him. They took the oath, drawing their swords that shone red as blood in the firelight. They swore to pursue with hatred and vengeance anyone, no matter what race, age, good or evil, weak or powerful, anyone who had, stole, or kept a Silmaril from their hands. This oath, taken by Feanor and his sons, scared some of the Noldor. They understood the terrible significance of those words. Fingolfin and his second son, Turgon, tried to speak out against Feanor, and immediately arguments arose, very nearly resulting in violence. Finrod, Finarfin's eldest son, was with Turgon trying to speak out against what Feanor was shouting. Finarfin himself attempted to just calm everyone down to try to get them to stop and think, saying that there are some things that cannot be undone. And in this crowd of riled up princes, Galadriel was the only lady of the Noldor to stand and say aloud that she wanted to go into the east. She did not take the oath, and she had no love for Feanor, but she wanted to experience the lands of Middle-earth and find somewhere that she might rule over. Fingon, Fingolfin's eldest son, felt similarly to her. He also had no love for Feanor, but wanted to go east. Angrod and Angnor stood with their friend Fingon, but said nothing because they knew that their father, Finarfin, did not want them to go. So the families of Fingolfin and Finarfin were divided. The fathers spoke against Feanor, but the children all had different mindsets. The debate raged until finally Feanor came out on top, and he had the majority of the Noldor ready to march from the city. Despite a last-ditch effort from Finarfin to calm anyone down, they all went off to prepare for the journey. Feanor wanted them to leave quickly, even if it meant being underprepared, because he knew that as soon as the frenzy and the fire of passion started to die down, people might start to think differently. He was also concerned that the Valar would come and try to stop them. The Valar were in fact watching all of this take place from where they were seated, but they didn't think that the Noldor would actually follow Feanor from their city. As soon as the host was ready to leave, the first problem started. The Noldor, for the most part, had agreed to leave. But that did not mean that most of them wanted to follow Feanor as king. A whole lot more of the Noldor loved Fingolfin than loved Feanor. Many elves did not want Fingolfin to step down as their ruler. He had been leading them for the past couple of years, while Feanor had been exiled and Finwë had been with him. Feanor technically had the right to rule, but the majority of the people were not behind him. So the Noldor split. Feanor and his smaller group went first, then Fingolfin, and the rest of them followed. Now, Fingolfin did not want to go. It was mostly the passionate urging from his son Fingon, but he also just didn't want to lose the majority of his people, or, more importantly, leave them to Feanor's leadership. Finally, he just could not forget the promise that he had made before the throne of Manwë, that wherever Feanor led, he would follow. In the very, very back was Finarfin, the most reluctant to leave. He too was going because he did not want to lose his children. As the group prepared to leave the gates of the city, that is when the herald of Manwë finally came. The messenger declared that the Valar would not stop them from leaving, but no matter what happened, they would not help them either. The elves came freely, so they may leave freely, but the Valar implored them not to go, that the road ahead would be filled with great sorrow. However, Feanor himself no longer had the option to stay. The oath he had made was truly unbreakable, even by the Valar. It had been sworn on the name of Ilúvatar, and now he must go out to fulfill it. Feanor laughed at the herald, then turned to his people and demanded to know if they would send their king and his sons out alone, or if they would follow him and escape the sorrows of Aman. He said that even if there was sorrow on their future path to Middle-earth, they would push through it to find the joy, or at least to find freedom. Then Feanor answered the herald himself. He said that there was a fire within him, forged by Ilúvatar himself, and that he would do such damage to Morgoth that the Valar would hear of it and be amazed. Don't mind the light of my recording there. It's, Laurelin is shining in. What can you do? So the herald took Feanor's answer, and the Noldor forged on. The city behind them was not empty, though. There were some who decided to stay, and not for fear of the journey. Some simply loved their home too much to want to leave, or could not see a future without the Valar. And among those who did not follow was Feanor's wife, Nurdinel. Nurdinel had been very close to Feanor. They had much in common. She created sculptures while he was a great blacksmith. But as the fire and rage grew within him, they had drifted apart. Aule was close to her father and had warned him that the rebellion Feanor craved would only result in not only Feanor's death, but the death of all Nurdanel's sons. We don't know where Nurdanel was during all of the speeches and debates that happened in the court of the High King, but we do know that when Feanor had been preparing to leave, she went to him and begged for him not to take her sons, for him at least to leave her the youngest, the twins. But Feanor's response was that she was not a true wife because she was abandoning them by refusing to follow him. And he left. At this point, they had been estranged for at least a few years. Nurdanel had not gone into exile with him from Tirion, but neither had Indis, Finwë's wife. There are some comments in the histories of Middle-earth that imply that Finwë and Indis had been having some marital problems, that perhaps she was not happy at the way he put Feanor first and was not enough of a parent to her sons. And we do know from the Silmarillion itself that Finwë put Feanor first in pretty much everything. So although her sons, Fingolfin and Finarfin, left the city with their children, she did not go. And neither did their wives. Inere and Irwen were very close friends, and although we don't really know why they decided to stay and not follow their husbands and children, one possible reason is that Irwen was not of the Noldor, she was Teleri, so to leave would mean leaving the rest of her people. And so, through the gates of Tirion went Feanor and his 7 sons, leading their group. Fingolfin and his children followed, though slower after the warning from the messenger, and last was Finarfin and his children, along with many of the wisest of the group. And often they looked behind them to see their fair city, until the light of their highest tower was lost in the night. I hope you'll join me next week when we will talk about what exactly happens on their journey from Valinor to Middle-earth and the consequences of their choices. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for spending some time with me here today. Please leave a like, a comment, and I'll see you next week.